Hi, and welcome to day 2, where we are going to start building our brand artifacts for our brand new business. If you didn't check out day 1, please do. And remember that we are starting a business from scratch. We do not have any branding at this point. We don't have anything set for our business. And as an end result, we will be publishing our yield cover application to production, and that will be in 30 days or less. But today we're going to be focused solely on branding. So let's get started. We are going to build our brand artifacts today. What we are going to do to build these artifacts is we are going to hire a brand manager, which will be Perplexity. We're going to build a brand guidelines document. I will have a link to that in the description where you can use my template if you would like, and that will hold all of our artifacts. We're going to talk about the brand strategy, colors, typography, logos, social media, and other considerations which you might have for your brand. All of this serves as a great foundation for your branding going forward. So just keep that in mind, that by spending this time now, you're going to avoid a lot of confusion and headaches in the future when you have to make these decisions. The estimated time to complete our branding is 4 hours. You could certainly do it in less if you have some of these already halfway defined, or you could take more time, as I'll explain a little bit later on here. So a reminder of how this particular business example is set up. We have Strategic Consulting Corp as our parent organization. And underneath the parent organization, there is going to be potentially a library of applications, the first of which will be the yield cover application. However, for today's purposes, we are starting with the branding at the highest level, and then we will be able to reuse that branding for each application underneath Strategic Consulting Corp. So we're working on overarching branding today, and we will not be talking about yield cover specifically. The number one thing I did was I hired a brand manager, and my brand manager is named Denise, and I hired her, and she is actually Perplexity. I chose to use Perplexity because I actually don't have a lot of experience with Perplexity, and I wanted to see how it performed versus other AI tools. So I have a very generic shell of in Perplexity, and that was a good blank canvas to start from. All right, so how did I do this? Over in Perplexity, we have a thing called Spaces, which is similar to probably projects that you might use at ChatGPT or other environments. I created one called Brand Manager, and I simply fed it the context. Now, this is I also will share you in the link below the context, but this is a brand manager, and I want this brand manager named Denise. I want her to perform like a brand manager that has had experience for 15 years in building these brands for B2B SaaS applications. So she is going to help me through all of the items that I told you earlier. She's going to help me through the strategy. She's going to help me through the assets that I need to develop, everything. So everything you're going to see today was essentially developed for me by Denise. And I can go in and I can start new chats about all of the different pieces. I have actually done a really long-winded conversation with Denise about my branding, and that's what we're going to go over and share together today. So the first thing that we need to do, let's minimize Denise here, is we need to create a brand guidelines document. And I will share a link to the generic brand guidelines document with you below. But your document is going to hold everything. So then you can go ahead and give this as context to any other AI tool, any human being, anyone on your team that is looking at your branding artifacts and also your brand positioning. The pieces of the brand guidelines are going to be your brand positioning statement, which Denise helped me to write, your brand strategy, your core brand values, your colors, your typography, your logos, and your social media. Let's start out with the first 3 items. And when I asked Denise to help me actually create these items, I went with whatever she said. And then I also customized some of the wording to my own wording. So this part actually did not take a lot of time. I gave her some of my domain and my positioning expertise, but essentially I want to get something out the door that lets her know that I am a professional, I am technically inclined. We want to deliver clear, practical solutions. So you have the brand positioning, the brand strategy, our core brand values. We want to be an expert. We want to be efficient. We want to I said technical excellence. All of those things, she's going to help us write this in a very readable format where as I was just chatting with her, kind of spewing text at her. All of these were actually part of the Perplexity chat, and I copied and pasted them back into I copied and pasted them all back into the document. So you got a couple things going on. We have a Perplexity chat with Denise, and then we have a Google Doc of our brand guidelines. Now, you almost have to keep everything in your own document so that you have all that context together. So just keep that in mind that you're going to be copying and pasting your final versions out of Perplexity into this document in Google Docs or wherever you keep it. So here is a prompt that I gave to Denise, for example. I'm launching a new B2B consultancy specializing in digital transformation. She's going to take all of that information and she is going to translate it into what is my brand foundation? What is my strategy? What are my values? The main thing that we want to pull out of here is what you are aiming for and what you are valuing as a business. So obviously B2C brands would be much different than B2B brands, but you generally just want to get the essence of what your business is about. It does not have to be perfect at this point because more than likely it is you and one other person, but this is setting up all the context for your AI and or any human employees that you will have. Now let's talk a little bit about colors. Colors is somewhat difficult to discern, especially if you've never done branding before. So here's a couple of recommendations for you. I would ask AI for recommendations of color and choose the appropriate colors that either go with any theme that you might think you have, or also have a connotation in a way that conveys what you're going for. So for example, if I had hot pink on my site, you might think that my product was maybe for children. It might be a frivolous, fun product. It might be a game, probably not a business application. All right, dark blues, blacks, grays, those convey more of a business application. So this can take you a while. If you don't know what to do, it can definitely take you a while, but luckily there are lots of resources. AI is probably not directly going to give you, it might give you a color combination, but here's a couple of things you can do. You can go to Adobe, they're going to have color themes. You can go to Color Hunt, they're going to have color themes. What did I do? I took my color themes directly from a PowerPoint theme. And I have used this PowerPoint theme for quite some time. So I actually took mine as a variation from this PowerPoint theme. And I'm going to use this throughout all of my artifacts so that I'm consistent. I also want to have a PowerPoint theme for future reference, obviously, because I am a business that probably will be, issuing lots of slide decks, as yours might be as well. So how do we file the colors? You can go ahead and you can take the template that I linked below, and you can go ahead and you add your colors in here as you generate them. So I have my text colors, which are obviously text, the background that's going to go with the text, and kind of the usage on here. So obviously white would be on a dark background. My primary colors are the very bold colors that are used throughout. My secondary colors are more used for smaller call outs or maybe some buttons, things like that. And accent color is used for like a in your face button. So my orange is definitely my large call to action color. My hyperlink colors, it looks like they might be the same color here, so I'll have to fix that. And any neutral colors throughout. So all of these are important to get defined now so that you have them in your toolbox, you have them in your CSS, you're able to use them down the road. It's going to save you a lot of time if you just spend an hour deciding on your colors. Next is typography. If you are not familiar with typography, you can do a little bit of research on this. Their fonts have a lot of different connotations, and there are a lot of reasons why to use one font over the other, just like color. I'm not going to go into depth on this, but I will say to do a few things. So, number one, try to research whether or not the font you want is applicable for your business case and whether it seems like it's a good fit. And ask AI for an alternative web font. So, if you have an uncommon font, you should also have a secondary font that's able to use with the web, because sometimes if you choose a custom font or a fancy font, there is not an option. And then you're going to have to place all this information again in your brand guideline stock. So let's look on the right. We have Verdana at the top, which is a very commonly used sans serif font. It looks fairly professional. It's very easy to read. There's no confusion that it either conveys plainness, genericness, business. It doesn't convey anything silly or frivolous. Now, if we look at a font on the bottom called Satisfy, it's more in cursive, and it is going to convey a more frivolous sense. And I would not recommend or use this for either on the web because it's hard to read, or a business, because to me, it is more of probably a B2C product that would use a font like this. So use those fonts sparingly. And if you have questions, AI can help you to answer all those questions about what is the best to use for your typography. So then there's a typography section in here. So in your brand guidelines, you got your typography. You need to put your font family guidelines. For example, I chose Gill Sans MT with an alternative of Verdana. And it is just going to give examples. Now, Denise generated all of this for me. So I did not need to generate all of this. I simply copied this into this document. So she gave me all of the information. I copied it into this document. Now, after we choose our font, the next piece is that logos. So the logos were actually the most difficult to do within Perplexity. I gave Denise lots of guidelines, and she gave me several examples of what I should use for my icons and my logos. But we're going to get down to the bottom line here. It took her a lot of iterations to get a decent logo. And she would also forget what logos she had maybe given me, or I would tell her to correct something and she would not have it corrected. She would correct it and then not have it corrected in the next iteration. But that I digress. So the logo part can take you a few hours. I do want to say that erring on the side of having something out there is better than being perfect. You can always edit your logo later en masse, but you want to have some sort of general template. For most websites, most printed material, you're going to want to have an icon. You're going to want to have a horizontal logo, and you're going to want to have a vertical logo at the very least. And you are going to want to also put that information into the logo usage guidelines for your branding guideline. Now, it looks to me like I don't even have an example of each one, so I do need to get an example of each one in there. But Denise is going to generate all this information for me. All I do is I look at it, I validate that it sounds approximately correct because, she or anyone else is going to use this for context for the next one. And then I have all of my logos saved off in a specific place where I can use them and modify them. We're going to come back a little bit to logos in a few minutes here. Okay, so the last piece that I'm going to talk about today is your social media. So I would ask Denise or your brand manager to generate your social media banners, your verbiage, and all of your artifacts as well. In my case, it's business focused. So the only things I would probably have would be potentially LinkedIn, YouTube, and also items for my own website. But I'm also going to place those directly in my document as well. So my branding guidelines, looks like I don't even have that in here yet, but I will have a social media section in my branding guidelines. I'm also know that I will be using a lot of slide decks. So I do have slide deck guidelines as well. And I have a slide deck template. You do not need to do that for part of this because developing the application doesn't take a slide deck. So we can forget that for today. So you're probably thinking, okay, this was great, but there's a lot of other items that come with branding that Mara did not go over. Absolutely. Denise can help with a lot of these, but there are a lot of things I am skipping over for the sake of time. We want to get this application out in 30 days, and spending a day on branding is about all that we can afford. So things like competitor research, your customer market research, your mood board, all of your image formats. So, you need your vector images, you need all the editable pieces. I did not have her generate all of those for me. I also did not have her generate any of the additional images that I would use in like videos, LinkedIn, anything like that. So all of that went to the wayside for sake of brevity on this branding exercise. All right. I want to give you one more note that explains why this is so beneficial to use Denise as my branding manager rather than using actual traditional brand planning. Okay. So in traditional brand planning, Denise estimated that it would take me about 6 weeks to get my brand out the door. So I'd spend a week on discovery, 2 weeks on visual identity, etc. And that is true. And this is necessary in an established business because you have so many different constituents and you have so many different stakeholders that you really have to be able to get everyone's approval and buy-in. Well, maybe not everyone, but you at least have to get some approval and buy-in. And then there has to be a whole rollout and a launch of your brand. You are a founder, you are doing one product. You do not need to go to all this effort. What is the comparison here? In traditional brand planning, which might take 6 weeks and might take approvals from a dozen different folks, we can bring this down into a matter of hours by simply using your domain knowledge, and defining an AI brand manager. Your AI brand manager will then help you with your brand guideline and strategy, your colors, typography, and logos, and any other considerations that you might have immediately. But this is saving us weeks worth of work and helping us to get out the door much faster. We are starting one product and we can easily come back and we can iterate on this if we need to. Hopefully this was helpful today, our day 2 branding. And I will share the links to all of the templates in the description below. If you have any questions, as usual, reach out. And please come back for day 3 as we are going to be building and deploying our first website. Not the application, but our actual marketing website. See you next time.